Veda, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me for this conversation.
Oh, thank you so much, Bhavna, for having me. I'm excited about talking to you today.
Wonderful. Veda, when I look at you, I for sure see a woman who is at the top of her game. You are a country executive for your organization, Northern Trust. And I know from conversations with others in the organization, you are someone who is universally admired. You've reached a position that I'm sure many aspire to, but few reach, and perhaps even fewer women, though I know that is changing as well. So I'm curious how you were able to reach such an admired position in your career. And specifically, I'd love to know, is this for you? Was this a goal that you consciously set at some point in your life that I am going to go all the way to the top, and you proceeded in that manner? Or was it something that happened more organically for you, where it was just you working really hard, putting one foot after another, and saying yes to opportunities as they arise?
Yeah, and you're right, Bhavna. It was the second, really. From the time I started my career, it was very steep and it was a very staggered career path. And some might say that I benefited from circumstance, but I believe um, that it was my desire to grow, learn, expand, and actually just try new things. I always looked to see what I could be doing different and new. What new skill or tool could I add to my toolkit? And I wasn't, to your point, I wasn't really specific about where I wanted to go for probably about the first 15 years or so. I was just focused on building my skill set. And, but then I reached a point where I recognized the things that I am good at, even great at, and the things that I love doing. And unfortunately, sometimes those things don't always intersect.
Mhm.
So for example, I am great at selling. I've done it in a number of my roles for a number of years in many parts of my career, but I don't love it. Um, so for myself, I'm now at the point where I want to do the things that I love,
Mhm.
that give me a sense of purpose and value. But don't get me wrong, I'm realistic in knowing that in any role, you're going to get parts that you love and parts that you have to get through to get to the parts that you love. And so for any role, I look and see that if you've got 50% that you love, you're in a really good place. So to answer your question, I think I've always wanted to get to somewhere where I could influence. Um, I could provide direction. I could own and drive and deliver. And it just so happened that I ended up here in India as being country executive.
Wonderful, wonderful. And this theme of being open to learning above all else is certainly something I hear from a lot of leaders. So I love that you echoed that as well. Veda, I'm also curious to know how much of your leadership was informed by early influences in your life. And if we were to, let's say, go back to your early years, if we had an opportunity to observe the Veda who was a little girl, let's say,
Mhm.
how how much evidence would we see of where she might end up then? And so I just love to hear from you. What influenced you in your growing up years that helped you be who you are today?
Oh, it's a great question, Bhavna. And I think a lot of the core values, the ethics that I learned came from my parents. My parents were immigrants from Trinidad to Toronto. I was actually born in Canada. I was born in Montreal, and my parents very quickly after I was born moved to Toronto. And so, as newcomers to a new country, I learned about work ethic, understanding your core values. My parents and myself are very religious people, staunched in our religion, which was very different than the Canadian religions. That was the Christian religion in Canada that was prominent at the time. So understanding being true to yourself, understanding who you are, while learning to explore, appreciate others and their perspectives, I think was something that I learned from very young. I went to Bible school when I was I think I was probably about 6 or 7, and I went to Bible school because there was a church just up the street. So to me, it was, I think, one of the things that kind of shaped and developed me was understanding who I am, understanding where my core is, and also being willing to listen and understand and put myself into the shoes of others, to be able to form a more broader opinion and perspective for myself.
Mm, wonderful. Yeah. I think have having those early influences condition how you see yourself, and clearly in your case it's really helped you become more aware
Resilient,
and
resilient.
resilient. But also I hear that sense of empathy that you have is also informed by your early influences.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things, Bhavna, and this was something that I reflected upon probably about 10 years ago, is no, probably a little bit later than that, probably about 8 years ago, because it was when I had already relocated to India. So I've been here now for 9 years. Um, and one of the things that I realized is I've always been a minority, no matter where I've been. So
Mhm.
in Canada, I was a minority growing up. I was actually in a neighborhood called Whitehaven, believe it or not.
Mhm.
And in Chicago, again, a minority. And
Mhm.
interestingly, coming to India, I'm also a minority.
Mhm.
I might, at first glance, look the same as everybody else, but as soon as I start talking, people know that I'm not from here. I am in the minority. And I think having that perspective always has also made me maybe fight a little bit harder, maybe push a little bit more. I think some of the other things that happens when you're a minority is that you tend to represent what you do tends to represent everybody else who's classified the same way that you are. And I
Mm.
think that is something that weight, if you like to call it the weight, the pressure of that has also shaped me in a very different way, um, that I didn't truly appreciate until very recently, as to how that, to my earlier point, how that made me resilient.
Mhm. Wonderful. Veda, I'd love to talk to you about ambition.
Mm,
Now,
yeah.
some may look at you and say, here, clearly, here's an ambitious woman.
Mhm,
Now, the word ambition, for whatever reason, culturally, sometimes does take on a negative connotation, especially when it comes to women.
mhm.
I'd love to know what is your relationship with the word ambition, and if you would call yourself an ambitious woman.
Um, well, I think I am driven.
Mhm.
Ambition for me is not simply moving up the ladder or earning more money. It's again doing something that I value and brings purpose and tangible purpose. And that the organization that I work for values my contribution. I think that's probably what drives me the most. Now,
Mm.
that could maybe sound a little soft and fluffy. And I get that it can sound soft and fluffy, but this holds true whether you're in operations, risk management, relationship management, or country executive. When I wake up in the morning and I go to work, I want to move with purpose. And at the end of every day, I want to look back and see what I have learned, done, developed, or moved forward. And if that's considered ambitious, then yes, I am, and I'm proud of it.
Mhm. Hmm. And I'd also love to know your perspective on whether ambition always comes with a cost or with a price. And for you to get to the level where you are, did you feel like there was something you had to give up, or were there sacrifices that you had to make to be able to achieve what you have achieved?
Well, first of all, Bhavna, thank you for posing the question in this way. A lot of the times in these types of discussions, the question that I get is, how do you balance having a career and being a mother? And I have yet to see or hear a podcast or an interview where someone is asked, how do you balance having a successful career and being a father? So thank you for asking the question as you did. But going back to your question, I don't think that there is any choice that a person can make that doesn't come with pros and cons. So I don't necessarily see it as a sacrifice. I see it as a choice. I see that we each make individual choices. And for me, it was a choice. I wanted a family and I had children. And that meant I had to take some time out when my children were small. And that was pure logistics of having a baby. And when my children were small, my career progression was not as steep as it was before I had children, or even now that my children are grown. You know, in a lot of the learning and self development classes, you kind of do that chart that takes a look at your time and your career progression. And I didn't, and it really became noticeable to me when I kind of charted it out and I looked and I said, wow, you know, while the kids, you know, before they started school, my career was like a level like this. And then during that time, it was a little, you know, a little bit flatter during that time. And so, yeah, I had to make choices. And then as the kids got a little bit older, Bhavna, I wasn't there to pick them up from school every day. I wasn't there to attend every soccer game or take them to every doctor's appointment. But those were choices that their father and I made together. We made those choices that were, you know, at the time, it was purely economic. A lot of it was purely economic because he was able to do those things. And so I didn't have to. So those, again, were choices that we made together. Um, and I don't regret any of it. I think I am blessed to have two beautiful children, and and I have now a flourishing career.
Yeah. I love, Veda, that you have framed it as a series of choices that you have made and not necessarily sacrifices, because I agree that has a more empowered tone to it. It's something you chose, and it aligned well with your goals, um, and and here is where you are, and you're able to create space for both in your
Yeah,
life. So
correct. Absolutely. Absolutely, Bhavna. So I've been blessed. Like I said, I have been blessed. But I think it's about making those choices and living with the repercussions of those choices and knowing that you own those repercussions the same way that you own those choices. I think that's what empowers any person, women and men alike.
I'd love to know what you would say to women out there who have similar ambitions or aspirations, whatever the term may be, to continue rising in their career. And I certainly see this in the programs we run here at Genomics for women leaders. I do come across a lot of women who definitely have that level of ambition, and many are not apologetic about it, as they as should be the case. At the same time, though, I do see a certain hesitation around, well, sure, I can take on a larger role, sure, I can take on more responsibilities, but what might that mean in terms of what I may have to give up, or how that's going to change things for me in terms of my other priorities? So what would you say to those women?
Yeah, now that's a great question. And we talk about equality and equity in the workplace, but seldom do we talk about equity and equality at home. So, if I may, I'm going to respond with what might be considered slightly controversial, and I will pose this in the binary, so apologies up front. Have we asked men that have continued to work while their children were young what they had to give up? I mean, here in India, a lot of us work European hours. So that means we come home well after our children are asleep and we only see them on the weekends. And how has that made men feel as fathers? So I think advice that I would give to young women is, how do they feel about what they had to give up and continue to give up? But again, going back to our conversation, our earlier conversation, it's my advice is to understand your choices. And I'm not saying that we can cure all the cultural pressure and the societal expectations, but things are changing in this country. And Bhavna, it's podcasts and platforms like these ones hosted by Genomics that are helping us to move forward and allow us to have those choices. But those choices, just like anything else, with more choice becomes more responsibility. And I think each of us individually needs to think about what we want, what we truly want, and what we value, and weigh those and weigh those accordingly. And at some points in your life, something is going to be more important than others, and that's okay. I think one of the other things that we sometimes do is because we are so much thinking about empowering ourselves, and we think empowering means being more equal and equitable to men in the society. I think empowering says that whatever choice I make, I'm going to stand in it. So if I have an incredibly successful career and I have a baby and I choose to stay home for the next 5 years to take care of my child, that's my choice, and I should be respected for it and not be seen as someone who has put myself on hold. It was my choice. And I think there are hundreds of thousands of women, if not millions of women, who make that choice every single day. And as a career woman, when we talked about empathy earlier, that to me is where, you want to understand that not everybody's in the same situation as you. Not everybody has the same choices, preferences, beliefs, values that you have. And so being respectful of those while respecting your own values and choices, I think is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it comes to ambition, when it comes to these choices,
Mhm.
it is so essential that if we're going to nurture our ambition, we be assertive in creating the right kind of support systems for ourselves, for that
Yes.
ambition to be nurtured and to grow, and have it translate into that career growth or whatever aspirations we have in our lives. So for you, Veda, what continues to support you, and and what continues to support your ambition so you can continue doing what you would like to do and continue meeting the professional goals that and personal goals that you're setting for yourself?
I think I have a few things, Bhavna. I think I have my husband, who is incredibly supportive of me. The decisions that we've made, like the decision to move to India, that was an opportunity that was presented to me. It meant that he had to give up his career, so he retired in order to do this. And it has been a blessing for both of us. We've grown, I've grown professionally and personally during this. So I think my husband has been a big part of that. My parents, again, while they helped and put me on the right ground forward, they've always been there to be the ones telling me that this is the path that you're on. Choose where you're going wisely. They always continue to give me very, very sage advice. And then I think it's also the organization that I'm working with. I think like I've said, I've always demonstrated that I'm willing to put my hand up for the difficult task, program, role, something new, something different, something that maybe others don't want to take on. And the organization has supported me in offering those types of roles and opportunities to me. So I think the combination of that, which and while I'm in an organization um, like Northern Trust that supports and nourishes all of our partners, because we call our employees partners. I think it's also about each individual and being able to demonstrate that you want to do more, you want to go forward. And it's that, for lack of a better term, it's that marriage of the two that really just helps and has helped me continue my upward trajectory.
Mm. It's fantastic to hear that you have a partner that you can indeed call an equal partner, because that's another theme I do see with successful women leaders is um, they they are able to create that partnership where they are able to equally share responsibility, because that is the only way one can nurture one's ambition. So that's fantastic. And coming now to the organization, I'd love to hear more about what you are doing as a leader to create that supportive environment for other women in which they can engage or indulge or grow their ambitions. Because when it comes to ambition, I know, and now multiple studies have shown, while there's this often sometimes there's this myth that if women aren't getting ahead, it's because they lack ambition. We know from multiple studies, and also from just observing and so many women, that that's not the case. In fact, the I believe it was the Lean In Women in the Workplace study that came out last year, which clearly said that women are as ambitious as ever, and their level of ambitious is equal to that of their male counterparts. And if ever we do see a decline in ambition, it's not purely because women are lacking in confidence or competence, but it many times it is in response to what they're seeing in their environment. And if they're not being encouraged in the right way, women do start to adjust their level of ambition. So I know that's where leaders like you can play a great role, and I know you in particular are doing a lot there. So tell us more about what can leadership really do to ensure women's ambitions are supported.
Yeah, I think, Bhavna, we touched a lot on this already in this conversation, but as leaders, I believe that we need to stop and think about if we're asking questions or making assumptions, based on gender. And by that, I mean, for example, now a young couple can take maternity or paternity leave in many organizations. A lot of organizations now offer both. And when they return, my question to leaders is, do we hesitate to ask a new mother to take on a demanding role or a role that will require additional travel? And do we do the same with a new father? So, as a leader, we need to question if we're feeding the biases ourselves. We should ask the most qualified person to take on that demanding role and let them make the choice that is best for them in their situation. We can't assume that we know what's best for individuals. And making and creating opportunities for talented individuals is key. Um, so part of that process for creating opportunities is curating programs that provide the skills and experiences and advice that might not be readily available to certain parts of our population, like women. So it could be that we have a number of women in our organization and they are the first to be in a corporate environment. So they don't have a familiar in their family. So they don't have a familial network to lean in on. And I think that's where we as leaders can put together, whether it's a program, whether it's a formal program, whether it's an informal program, whether it's mentoring, whether it's conversations, to help them understand those perspectives, understand where others have gone before, and therefore others can continue to go, to help and to nourish and grow her career. Um, I believe an organizational culture that sees that individual is key to, um, to growth.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. So it sounds like it has to be a combination of, yes, you are acknowledging that it really is about really seeing that potential in that individual and acknowledging it and supporting it. Uh, but at the same time, recognizing that there may be additional support or a different kind of support that women may need, and offering that to them.
Absolutely, absolutely, Bevna. So I think, whether it's, mentoring groups or networking circles, and just being able to have really open and honest conversations with others around, share the stories, share the perspectives, having someone to talk to about it, I think that is something that we nurture and we develop here as well, where we create opportunities for women to come together, learn, develop, and nurture one another. Because I think that is important in any career. And I think being able to let someone know, because sometimes, like as you talked about, where someone might be ambitious, but has learned so many times, or their history has taught them, when I'm ambitious I kind of just get pushed back into my box again, so you know what, let me just stay in my box. I think, to your point, it's up to us as organizations to be able to allow and provide those opportunities for people to stretch and learn and grow, and let them know that they're not alone, and that they do have others that they can speak to, others that they can lean on, advice that they can drive. So I think all of those things in an organization and a leader, it's important for all of us to help and encourage.
Wonderful. Now, changing gears now and thinking about what is that level of responsibility we can take as individuals, as women, to nurture our own ambition.
Mhm.
I'd be curious to know, Veda, what a day in the life of Veda looks like in terms of what are those habits or routines or rituals that you have put in place for yourself that allow you each and every day to show up as your best version, and be as ambitious as you would like to be.
Yeah, Bhavna, this is something, and I, this is probably a piece of advice that I give in almost every one of my discussions and talks. And this started for me probably about 20 years ago, um, when things weren't necessarily going the way that I wanted it to go in my career. Um, but again, I think it's with, the blessings of, my parents and the support network around me. I woke up every morning, and I still, to this day, wake up every morning telling myself it's going to be a good day. And that's giving me the power to decide what my day is going to look like. And nobody can take that away from me. If I decide that, nobody can take that away from me. So that's the thing that I always start with. And is that a conscious reverberation in my brain? Not always, but I mean, I'll wake up and I'll, do some yoga, do some core work, get my blood pumping, get my energy up, so that I am hitting my day with energy in abundance. And that's something that I've always done. And I enjoy my day much better when I hit it with energy and I know it's going to be a good day. The other thing that I do on a daily basis is at the end of the day, I reflect back and I think, what was the one thing that I learned today? What was the one thing that I was able to do, connect, help somebody with? And for me, I mean, sometimes, Bhavna, it's something as easy and as little as learning a new Windows shortcut, and figuring out, wow, I can do that way faster in Excel than I was doing it before. Or it could be something as significant as understanding, how a capital market strategy ties in with our balance sheet. So it could be big, it could be small, but every day I reflect on that so that I know at the end of the day, I'm going to sleep a slightly better version of myself than the one that I woke up. And the next day, I start the cycle all over again.
I love the conscious approach to really ensuring that you're approaching your day with the right mindset. And I love the practice of, at the end of the day, really reflecting on what you have learned, so that the following day you can apply those learnings and continue growing, continue evolving. So that's absolutely fantastic. Now, just to close off our conversation today, Veda, one thing that is core to our philosophy at Genomics is this idea of conscious leadership and conscious living. And at the heart of that is being very conscious and mindful of the values that
Mhm.
you choose to live and lead with. So I'd love to know from you, Veda, what are for you what are those values that you are choosing to live and lead with?
Yeah, so Bhavna, I think, programs of self-development that Genomics leads are incredibly helpful for young women. And I did something very, very similar, probably about 20, 25 years ago, where I did a development class. And they asked me, or part of all of us, part of what they asked us to do is to take a look, think about when you were happy in your professional life, your personal life, your family life. Think about when you were sad, think about when you were angry, think about when you were upset, and kind of chalk out the stories between each of those. And so one of the things that, and then, we kind of went through a bit of an exercise. And one of the things that I recognized in myself through that was that I value honesty and integrity. I value that when someone is interacting with me and when I'm interacting with others. And that's everything from my children. And so, and my children know that from when they were young, I would always say to them, that it doesn't matter what you do, just come and talk to me and we'll work through it together. And that philosophy is something that even translates into the workplace. If there's a problem or an issue that's out there, I want to be informed of it as opposed to finding out myself. Um, and the inverse is true as well. I think, just like in this interview, Bhavna, when someone asks me a direct question, I'm going to give them a very direct answer. It's something that I hold very dear to me. And it's, whether it's in one of my Ask Me Anything sessions that I do. Now, sometimes people ask me questions and I'll be very open and honest and I'll say, what, at this point, I'm not at liberty to discuss it. And people will respect that. But where I can share, I have been very, very open and honest and direct, whether that's in a group setting or one-on-one. And that's kind of built my brand of being somebody who is a direct communicator and someone who isn't afraid of a difficult conversation. So I think at the heart of that is the valuing of honesty and integrity.
Mm-hmm. Honesty, integrity. And I think another value you definitely role model is humility. And absolutely, it's been such a pleasure speaking to you, Veda. Thank you for really underscoring that a woman can be ambitious and nurture her aspirations, professional aspirations, and make an empowered choice to balance that with her other priorities and to be able to do so successfully as you have. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Well, thank you. And thank you again, Bhavna, for inviting me here today and allowing me to, share my perspectives with you and your audience. And I look forward to working with you more in the future, as I know we are later this year. So thank you again.
Thank you, Veda. Thank you so much.